Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us this Wednesday evening for our evening service. I'm Reverend Madge Pinecoffer, and I want to start out tonight with thanking all of you for your financial support for the Home Center during this closure. We're getting donations coming in that are, some of them are from surprising sources, some of them are from our regular people that are still sending in their contributions even though we're not open for gatherings, I should say. And we're also getting some contributions that are a little larger than the normal ones just to make sure that we're here and viable so that when this thing passes we can continue to gather. So I really want to thank you. We're also very grateful for that support. It's really important. And I also want you to know that I'm working on an app that will be available on the computer, on the phone, that you can make your contributions to the Home Center. Hopefully it'll make it really easy, and it will be something that we will, of course, will really appreciate. We love you for it. Love for all the support that you're giving us, both by watching our services and for the support that we're receiving financially. We're in good shape, and we're looking forward to being able to come back together. So with that, I'm going to introduce Dick to give us the opening prayer.
Good evening all. Our Home Center ministerial team, Reverend Joe Pinecoffer, who is our minister of prayer, has our Wednesday prayer ready. Now more than ever, it is time to say that the right action is happening to me in my life right now, regardless of what appears to be happening in the outer world. Lord, I know this is true, and I believe this is true. In God's love and light, it is so. Amen. I'll turn it back over to Reverend Madge.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that very much. Okay, so I'm going to do something a little different tonight. As you know, if you've come to our Wednesday night services, at the end of the service we give intuitive messages for some of the attendees that we have here. And so this message tonight is kind of along that same concept. It's a message from Spirit that I received last week, but it's for everyone. So we'll just start rolling with my story. So I receive information in the moments before I wake up. And when I do, I know that those are message dreams. That's what I call them, are message dreams. I know that in that moment that there's information for me that is important. And the reason why I think it comes to me right before I wake up is so that I'll remember it and digest it and put some context to it. So several mornings in a row, I was seeing this book that was being a repeated experience. And this book wasn't a large book. It was a pretty small book, actually. And it's not an old book. It's not a new book either, but it's not an ancient book. Sometimes I've had those information dreams where the book was an ancient book, but not in this case. It actually looked like it was maybe printed in the 70s or maybe even a little earlier. The book is open in all of the visions or dreams that I had, and I'm noticing that the print is in 2 columns on each page. So that's an older print style. So I know that it's not a real modern book because that's typically an older style. So this last morning that I saw this book, I'm looking at it and I was told to notice what it's talking about. And even though I started reading it, they're telling me what it says, and it's about the birthing process. I also noticed that on the facing page, the second page would be opposite from your view, but from my view, the page 1 and page 2, that the last column was in parentheses and bolded. And usually, when you're writing and you put something in parentheses, it's usually a more in-depth information about something that's already written, but you don't want to put it in the context of the material because it's just giving you a deeper meaning of the details. So that was noted in my mind. So the words were explaining the process of birthing and how the contractions come in waves. Anybody that's given birth knows that. And how it pushes the baby down the birth canal. And it squeezes, in the process, it squeezes the fluids out of the lungs and out of the mucous membranes of the face. And I also noticed, as they were showing me that this material was about the birthing process, I noticed that across the top of the pages that there were 3 numbers. Even though there were 2 pages, there were 3 numbers. You know how visions are. They can be anything they want them to be. Well, the numbers that were across the top were 45, 46, and 47. And I quickly, even in the dream state, did the numerology on it and realized that that's number 9, number 1, and number 2 in the interpretation of numerology. So in my understanding, 9 represents the end of a cycle. 9 represents the closing or the ending of something. 1 represents a new beginning or a new cycle. And the number 2 in this context, from my understanding, means coming into right relationship. And I understood that the number 2 was about the information that was bolded in parentheses. So 9, the end of a cycle, 1, the beginning of a cycle, and 2 is about the 1 and is about the 9 and the 1, a deeper meaning of that. So to me, it's ending a cycle, we're beginning a cycle, and we're going to come into, and what it's about is coming into right relationship. So I know and knew even in the moment that this was about what we're experiencing right now with the COVID virus. I know that many of you have heard or read or understood from your own spirit partners very similar information. So this is not new, it's not profound, but it certainly validates many other accounts of this similar information that's coming to us at this time. And I understood that it was giving me the undeniable understanding that humanity is being birthed right now. And the last thing that was said to me before I woke up, the words that were said, is the contractions are starting. I thought, ooh, okay. So then I woke up and I'm going about my morning, and the download of information or understanding keeps coming to me throughout the morning. And what the context of that understanding is that this virus has sent us into our homes. And the home is the archetype of the mother. We've been sent into the womb of the archetype of the mother. And we have to stay there for a while. And we can't come out too soon. Because not all of our parts for this new beginning that we're starting, that we're going to be starting, hasn't developed yet. If everything stopped today, if this virus stopped today, and we all could say, ooh, we can go back to normal now, we would. We'd just gravitate right back to normal, and we would just pick up where we left off, and we wouldn't have a new beginning. Things will be different, some things will change, but we'd go back to our old habits. It hasn't been long enough yet for us to have a gestation period to develop a new beginning. So it doesn't matter if this virus is man-made, nature-made, or alien-made, for that matter. Humanity's collective consciousness has allowed it for whatever reason, for our higher good, for our higher purpose. Because it couldn't happen if we didn't have the capacity for it, or the reason for it, or the availability for it in our higher consciousness. So if you think about what the COVID virus is, it's all about the lungs. Our organs hold certain emotions, such as the liver holds anger, the kidneys hold worry, and the lungs hold grief. So if you think about what our modern persons doesn't do well, our modern society, we don't do grief. We don't do grief well. We don't like it. We do everything we can to avoid it. And I've noticed also, I was thinking about what I've been noticing in this last year. What I'm noticing is there are a lot of friends of mine that are practitioners and healers or facilitators for groups. They have been driven from within to try to create opportunities for people to process grief. And I've been noticing this over the last year, and I've been thinking to myself, every time another person steps up and says, oh, I want to do this class on grief. I want to do this workshop on grief. I want to bring people together and work on grief. And I thought, why is this a trend? And I didn't really understand it until now. And I think that was the calling from within, that we needed to work on our grief, our collective grief. And we haven't done it. These classes fall through, nobody attends, they can't get organized. Not one single one of them, or even a support group, a new support group, has been able to be formulated. Because we don't do grief, nobody will attend. We do everything we can to not do that. So it's my understanding that grief has built up in our collective consciousness, in our collective emotional body. And we've hit this tipping point that allowed the disease to come into this process through our physical body, and as well as through our emotional body on a global scale. And through this birthing process, the fluid is being squeezed out of our collective lungs to end this cycle and to prepare us for a new cycle. And one that is in right relationship. That's the context of this new cycle. So we cannot be in right relationship when we're filled with grief or have unprocessed or bottled up grief. So to me, the people that have contracted the COVID virus, and especially those that have died because of the virus, are my heroes. I am viewing these people as heroes because they've given the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good of humanity, for the greater good of the whole, and I honor them because they are processing it through their physical body for the greater good of humanity, in my opinion, and for my understanding of what I received. There are other things that are coming out of this virus also. For a very long time, everyone has been saying that the school system is failing our kids. And no one knew the answers to what the right thing was. No one has had solutions to our educational system. And no one's had the ability to make changes. No one knew even what those changes should be. Well, now, interestingly enough, the system has been changed overnight. The virus put a stop to that whole system in one day. It's amazing, amazingly powerful. And now the children are home with their parents, where they should be. And I'm hearing some parents realize that their child's behavioral problems were not from school. They haven't been paying attention to their kids in some cases. That's not with all. But now parents are 100% responsible for their kids in a way that they haven't been before. They can't go to the gym and spend hours to avoid that bedtime process or do these other things or whatever it is. They have to be at home with their family. So this virus has put everybody back into their homes. It's put families back together. It's made this huge correction overnight. And the other thing that's really interesting to me is that this correction has been made when we have nobody to blame for it. There isn't an individual in a decision-making role that made this decision. It just happened, and this correction in our family structure has been made. So it's put families back together again. Some people are finding new ways to be together, and they're loving it, and they're strengthening their family bonds, while others are finding that they don't really like their spouse anymore, and they're having to face it and work through it. The other thing that I think is wonderful is how quickly nature is reclaiming its territory. People and cars are not out and about, they're not on the streets, and the animals are returning. It only took a month, and the animals are returning. A month or less, actually. They're finding ducks and geese on the strip of Las Vegas, walking through the streets. Coyotes have been seen in San Francisco. Cougars are being seen in the city. Mountain sheep are running the streets. They didn't give a location, but I saw a picture of these mountain sheep running through the streets. It looked like it perhaps was London. And that's just to name a few. So I think it's beautiful how quickly nature is just coming in and filling up the void, or not just filling the void, but being in the places they rightfully should have been, in the places that were kind of taken away from them. So Mother Nature is remarkable. Oh, the other thing that's happened is in India, they're seeing the Himalayas for the first time in 30 years because the pollution has been reduced so dramatically. And now they have this gorgeous view of the Himalayas. They haven't seen them in 30 years. It's lovely what's happening.
Who knew?
Yeah. So we'll do fine. Mother Earth will do fine long after humans are done with this planet. She's remarkable. So with all these things that are working to get us back into right relationship, we can fight this birthing process and make it harder and longer than it needs to be or is meant to be, or we can surrender to the contractions and breathe through them and allow the grief to move through us and move through our collective consciousness or collective environment and prepare us for this new beginning, and this new beginning that is going to bring us into right relationship with our higher God self. So I want to thank you tonight for joining me. I hope I've given you something to think about and some inspiration of how we can see this that is not in a fearful way. Okay, so let's close our eyes for a moment and let's just go into a brief meditation, and let's think about how resilient the Mother Earth is and her amazing ability to recover and be natural in the strength of that naturalness. And let's pull on that energy, because she's whatever it is that we need, because we are part of this earth. So let's feel and draw upon that resiliency for ourselves as we go through this time of birthing into a new being, into a new way of becoming into right relationship with ourselves, with our family, and with the Mother Earth herself. And we feel these contractions in our society and in our ways of being, and allow us to breathe through it, teach us to breathe through it, teach us to let go of the grief, to process this grief through so that we can be in harmony with this birthing process as we come into our gestation period that is going to be ending in full development to have and embrace this new beginning. And let us be the ones to lead the way and celebrate what it is that we're coming into, and into right relationship with ourselves and with each other and with our Great Mother. Amen. Okay, so we're going to accept a new member into the Home Center today. So thank you for joining us for this. I'm very happy to introduce Ruth Zotis as a new member of the Home Center. Our mission: to empower, teach, inspire, and support the spirituality and well-being of the individual, family, community, and the world through services, events, classes, workshops, and healing practices. And our vision: Home Center is a center of excellence for spirituality and well-being, and our guiding principles to recognize our divine connection, to encourage each other to live empowered, fulfilling, and joyful lives, to appreciate our commonalities and our differences, to be mindful and considerate in our communications and interactions, and to take ownership of my actions, to have an attitude of gratefulness, to give generously from my time, talents, and resources. So Ruth, do you agree to those guiding principles?
I do.
Oh, thank you so much. So we really appreciate you becoming a member of the Home Center. You are now a card-carrying member. You know,
Thank
that's
you.
important should you ever get pulled over. And you have a PIN and a membership directory.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to say something about the Home Center that brought you to this place of becoming a member?
I haven't been in Oregon very long, and I was very happy to find the Home Center, like-minded people, and a place to gather. it's been very educational being here, and I really appreciate all of you.
We appreciate you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
And I would hug you, but
Yeah, we're not allowed to do that. Virtual hug.
thank you.
Thank you, dear. Appreciate you very much. So thank you and God bless.